Finally, you're the girl. No, I've heard stories like this, and I know it's a fact. I know it's a fact. I remember the one story one fellow told me that, you know what, when they proposed for one girl, right? And the brother proposed for the other girl. Eventually, the other brother ended up marrying this girl and this girl. And the guy, hey, I was supposed to marry the other. No, true story, genuinely. So, bottom line is, for the past 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, that's how marriages, the contract of marriage was entered into. And the moment you got married, there, me, Tarzan, you, Jane, and you know what happened after that first night? Whether you knew each other, whether you didn't wait for about the romance or anything like that, you engaged in the act and marriage was consummated. Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum. Now, let's be realistic about it. You never had dating services. You never had singles bars. You never had people there going out onto one of these, websites there and, finding your ideal partner. And then you're going to, like now they're doing, in Hindu custom and so on, they look at the stars and the moon and let's see whether the kundliya, the kundliyas meet, you understand? Whether to right, and when is the right time to do, the shagun time to do the, right, nothing of that, right? Thank you very much, you got married, carry on. No one looked at compatibility. Really, you know what? I'm a Libran, and I know she's a Leo. Do our star signs match? Do our families match? It never happened. No, I'm being very realistic here. So coming back, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ, and from amongst the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once you understand that nikah is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is part of the divine plan, right? You'll understand from this that the sign, that because marriage is a sign of Allah, marriage is therefore a science. Marriage therefore is a science. Now let me teach you the science of marriage from this verse. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ. It means that nikah has a spiritual and a cosmic dimension, because it's from amongst the signs of Allah. Right? One is that it's part of the divine plan, and secondly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed the institution of marriage. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ, that He created from amongst yourselves. There's the biological, right, and the physiological dimension of marriage. So the entire biological process of how you have your spouse and your mate has been created from you, from the gene and the allele. You're talking about genetics now, from the gene and the allele to embryology to every aspect which brings into being creation, males and females, is an khalaqa lakum, is found in that. So here you have the biology of marriage, the physiology of marriage, the embryology of marriage, every aspect which is connected to the science of procreation and how man and woman have come into being is an khalaqa lakum. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, min anfusikum. Right? So you have the spiritual dimension of marriage, right? And then you have the scientific and the medical dimension. Let's use the word medical dimension of marriage, right? Medical, that's why I'm saying marriage is a science, the medical dimension of marriage. And khalaqa lakum min anfusikum, from amongst yourselves. Now here again gives you a cultural and anthropological and historical dimension of marriage, because the tafsir states that min anfusikum could refer to Adam and Hawa, that they are the original archetypes in terms of human beings on planet Earth. Min anfusikum could refer to the scientific aspect of it there, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you from one single cell, and then through the cell division, right, you had the process of, so min anfusikum. Min anfusikum could mean in terms of gender, right, that you belong to the same species, unless you're a Darwinian or you're a Dawkinian. You know what I mean, Dawkins, Richard Dawkins. Unless you're a Darwinian or a Dawkinian there, I don't think people are going to end up very soon here marrying monkeys. You may end up marrying a man who behaves like a monkey, or an ape, or whatever it is, right? But unless you're a Darwinian, you're going to marry from your own species. You're going to marry human beings. Okay? No one is going to monkey about and horse around, right? You're going to marry human beings. Meaning, anfusikum refers to all of that. Azwaja. Azwaja here refers to the physiological and psychological dimension of marriage, right? Wherein you have a partner, you have a spouse, you have the yin and you have the yang, right? And there is a female aspect to you, there's a feminine aspect to you, and there is a masculine aspect to every human being. and you have a feminine version of you, and you have a masculine version of you. Very interesting. No, I'm very serious about it. What makes you male? Physiologically, what makes you male? Your genitalia, right? And a couple of, couple of changes in the brain. Am I right, no? Other than that, you are genderless. Other than that, you are genderless. So you can't say my soul is feminine or my soul is masculine. You are free from gender. It's just your genitalia, fundamentally, and and a couple of other extra bits here and there, right? Minus a couple here and add a couple there, and some changes in your brain, minor changes in your brain there, which makes you male or female. The women have a thicker connection between the two hemispheres of the brain, to the corpus callosum, right, which enables them to multitask. Men have a thinner bridge there. That's why they can't do two things at one time. You understand? No. It's just about a little bit of changes physiologically that distinguishes us between male and female. But because we are essentially ruh, right, we need the balance of male and female in us. And your female spouse or your male spouse completes you. Really, this is not from Quran or from Sunnah. I'm just giving you purely from a so-called spiritual perspective, right? That they say in order for a man to receive the feminine, what's the word? To receive the benefit of the feminine in him, right? He must or he should hug his or her wife. Because there is a transmission which takes place, right? In terms of your femininity and your masculinity, right? This is purely now spiritual science, okay? It's not anything Islamic. I'm just giving you purely from a psycho-spiritual perspective. Right? Do this today if you are married. Don't do it if you are not married. I don't want to fatwa on me tomorrow, right? Go and hug your husband or go and hug your wife. And you know that warm, fuzzy feeling that you feel out there is real. That warm, fuzzy feeling that you feel out there is real. Really, it's real. There's an ancient Greek thing. Please don't take this as something now with a dalil. I'm just giving you purely as informational purposes. You know, there's a story, there's a belief in Greek mythology that the people who were destined to be together were connected by the umbilical cords. It's Greek mythology. I'm just purely for your information, okay? Greek mythology, and people were connected by their umbilical cords and they were connected together. You know, like say they're joined by the hip, right? They're actually joined by your navel, right? Joined by your navel. And it's a Greek mythology, okay? Joined by your navel. And then you were separated and you came to planet Earth and then you are rejoined again. Have you noticed that when male and female get together, there are 2 or 3 points which meet. And I'm not going to get into the description of that there because we have children here as well, right? But the whole point is there, it completes it. Now I'm very serious about it. This is serious stuff, okay? But that is where the completion takes place. And there is a transferal of the feminine into the masculine and a transferal of the masculine into the feminine, which gives you a sense of spiritual equilibrium. Min anfusikum azwaja, your spouses. Quran says, Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahun. They are a garment unto you and you are a garment unto them. They are an apparel for you and you are an apparel for them. What does clothing do? Clothing hides all the ugly bits, right? Clothing makes you smarter, makes you look smarter. Clothing beautifies you. Clothing adds to your zina, right? Clothing also hides faults. Clothing also keeps you warm. Or clothing also keeps you cool, right? Clothing is also a foil, right? The Quran gives you an example. Why does it give an example? You know what az-ziwaj literally means? If you look at the books of fiqh, az-ziwaj literally means, oh, the baby is here, finally. Az-ziwaj literally means the joining of 2 pieces of fabric together. 2 different pieces of fabric together is az-ziwaj. Marriage literally means, in Arabic, the joining of 2 different pieces of fabric together. So you are, one may be cashmere and one may be linen, right? One may be cotton and one may be nylon, right? and whatever else, I can't remember right now, right? But it's two different pieces of fabric together. And what happens? To join those two pieces of fabric together, what do you need? You need needle and thread, right? Now what happens with needle and thread? Now this is the important part. That's where people think that marriage can't be perfect. You just can't take two pieces of different pieces of fabric and put them together. You've got to have needle and thread. And what does the needle do? The needle actually punctures or pokes a hole in one fabric, and using the thread connects it to the other one. So there are holes all the way through. But those holes were necessary. Those punctures in the fabric were necessary in order to connect those two pieces of fabric together. Sometimes, and for all you fashionistas out there, sometimes you will know, no, hold on. These two pieces of fabric are not going to go together. It's not going to work, right? The linen and nylon don't work. But if the color is right, and if the feel of the fabric is right, and it doesn't look like nylon and doesn't feel like nylon, then sometimes when you do put those two pieces of fabric together, you find, hey, hold on a minute, this thing works and works very well. Ask any fashion designer how they put things together, and you come to realize that the Quranic, the Shari'i or the Fiqhi definition of ziwaj is very, very important. Two people from different backgrounds, people with different personalities, people with different ideas and attitudes about life, people with different personalities, people with different looks, people with different sizes, people with different strengths and weaknesses are put together. And that is the challenge of marriage. Min anfus azwaja. Right? The Quran says there are certain things. فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. There may be certain things that a man may not like in his wife, but in reality those things are beneficial to you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. And there may be certain that you may like in your wife, but not be beneficial to you. There are so many people out there that I know of who fell in love with a girl. I'm just using an example of a girl. Pretty girl. Fell in head over in heels with love with a girl. And that's what they liked about her. But her beauty was the downfall, right? She may have had good looks, but she was as shallow, right, as a toilet bowl. Sorry to use a stupid example, but you understand the whole point, right? I didn't want to put it any other full of, you understand? Okay? Or the girl may have married the guy because of his money. And all of a sudden, the father's business went bunk. And all of a sudden, now you're stuck with an idiot who can't work, who's a spoiled brat, right? And whatever it is. Now, these are realities of life. So you have these challenges in marriage. Azwaja. Right? And sometimes you'll get people out there, the husband may be one dwarf, quiet fellow, Allah miyaki, yes darling, okay darling, no problem darling. And she's the alpha. She may be the alpha, but somehow or the other, they complete one another. It won't be perfect, but you know what, somehow the other, they work. And have you noticed after a while, the couple are very good with each other. They start looking like one another. Have you noticed that? No, I'm very serious. No, my wife will never look as good as me. She does it, right? She told me I turned a grey. Right? They start looking like one another, and this is what aspect I was talking about earlier on, right? Because they have such a close spiritual bond with one another, literally they start looking like one another. They start finishing each other's sentences because they are so connected with one another. No, really, I've seen this, and this is where I spoke, about the transmission I spoke about, where you hug your. Really, that's what happens eventually, because you are influenced so much by that person that they become part of who you are, and you become part of who they are. I mean, azwaja. Then the Quran says, litaskunu. So let's go. It's spiritual, the spiritual dimension of marriage, the scientific dimension of marriage, the physiological and biological dimensions of marriage, then the psychological dimension of marriage, the cultural and anthropological dimensions of marriage. Azwaja. Litaskunu ilayha. Brings to you the practical dimension of marriage. Why? So that you may dwell with one another. Litaskunu, sukun means peace. Litaskunu means to dwell with each other in tranquility. Sukun also means stop. That's your place of refuge. This is where you come and you say full stop. Litaskunu ilayha, that you may live with them. And I'm going to use one example. To dwell with them also has a sexual dimension in them. وَجَعَلْنَاهُ فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. You understand? I'm not going to get into discussions about that. You understand my point, right? في قرار مكين, that you لتسكنوا إليها. You may find dwell with them in tranquil. لتسكنوا إليها. Now, what is important about لتسكنوا إليها also is that it brings in the practical dimension of marriage. You're going to start living with each other. You're going to start shacking up, which means that you're going to have bucks. You're going to have money, and now the finance comes into it. Then the mathematics comes into it. You know why? First you are a singular unit. First you learned in school, you learned units, tens and units. So you're a singular unit. Then you became a couple. Then you became two. Right? Now what happens? Then there's an addition to it. Now I'm showing you the mathematics of marriage. Right? From 1, you became 1 plus 1, you became 2. Right? Then what happened? You did some additions. 2 plus 1, you became 3. No, now what happens? There's a multiplication of problems. And multiplication of responsibilities. And a division of labor. A division of labor. Right? And there's an exponential increase in cost. Economics of marriage. Wait, Mariam, give me a few more terms, Emma. I can't think of any other terms in terms of economics. Right? Then you got to start budgeting. Right? Then you got to do long-term planning. You can't have another baby now. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Right? You got to now take on the responsibility of one extra room, extra pram, this one here, that one there. How are you going to babysit? لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Live, cars, accommodation, transportation, food, putting food on the table. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Now let me tell you something. And I'll be very honest here. Allah in His infinite wisdom has created it in such a way. Men are generally by nature more logical and more analytical. 1 plus 1 equals 2. They don't want complicated life. They don't want anything complicated. They don't understand why you're getting highly emotional about some matter, but because it was a simple thing. A plus B. What's wrong? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. So he took it. I'm fine. But for the woman, I am fine means I am not fine, and you better find out why I'm not fine in spite of the fact that I'm telling you I'm fine. And if I'm telling you that I'm fine, and you accept it that I'm fine, I'm going to be even more not fine because you accept it that I'm not fine. Now for men, that doesn't make sense. They can't understand that. Remember, please understand, forgive these people. Their corpus callosum are not as thick as yours. They just stick plain and simple. You understand? So they think about things logically. Right. Really. Let me tell you something, ladies, and forgive me if you think I'm being very chauvinistic here. Men, with their highly analytical and practical and dogmatic and pragmatic lifestyles that they have there, they only know 1 plus 1 equals 2. Me, Tarzan, you, Jane. Khalas. Right. No man in his on any level of sanity will take on the tanta and the headache of the complexities of marriage, particularly the complexities of women as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, if they were to use their logic, to use their akal, and to critically analyze the matter. The guy would say, oh, hold on a minute. Here I am living a carefree life. No responsibility, no accountability, no complication. I have my friends, we grunt, we shout, we scream. We know how we do things. We eat, I'm fine. Which guy in his logical mind is going to think, Salah, I must take on one headache. Do I look fat in this? Finished. That's now negotiating a minefield. If you say no, are you sure? If you say yes, are you saying I'm fat? Right. Who wants that responsibility? Which guy, I'm coming to the ladies just now, don't worry, don't feel so bad. Which guy in his right mind is nothing, Salah, children I must worry about. Nappies, hospital, an irritated wife, going through pregnancy, then hearing all the hissy fits that they go through. Then 1 week there on bread and water, right? And so many other issues that come with it there before we go into a machora discussion, okay? Which guy in his right mind, logically, pragmatic, be honest, do it? No ways, right? No, I'm quite happy the way I am. I'm very serious, and if Allah didn't create the sexual urge in men, men's practical, analytical, pragmatic, logical aspect of them would never ever concede to marriage. It doesn't make sense financially, emotionally, psychologically, logically, on any level whatsoever. It doesn't make sense. I'm very serious. Now let's come to the woman. No woman in her right mind, looking at how women are emotional, well, I don't mean emotional in a negative aspect, right? They are more emotionally far superior or emotionally more mature than men. Which woman in her right mind will want the headache of taking care of an overgrown baby? Right? Whose only brain, only frame of thought is one thing only. Every 25 seconds, he only thinks of one thing. Right? And then taking the burden and responsibility of being subservient in one form or the other under that guy's thumb, because he's paying for your expenses, this and that and whatever it is, and takes away her own dignity and her own freedom and her own independence and etc, etc, etc. If Allah didn't put that biological clock in them, one. And if Allah didn't place a little bit of, to add to the, topping up like that, vanity in them, for someone to appreciate them and, like the way they look there and so on there, no woman in her right mind will get married either. I'm very serious. Because men want to express themselves, right, physically. Women want to express themselves emotionally and through their vanity. Every woman wants to be appreciated for her beauty. It's part of the guys. And nowadays things have changed. And the guy will look at himself in the mirror. The metrosexuals, right? But generally speaking, no one is bothered about